Hey, today we are in Second Samuel, chapter 17 and 18, and we see David and his son um, Absalom finally coming to an end. I want to show you the area that we'll uh, be looking at. And this is the Jabbok River, and it's near Mahanaim, where the final battle takes place with Absalom. So I just want to give you kind of a lay of the land. This area is mentioned like a dozen times in the Bible. Most notably, this is where Jacob, a couple generations ago, met with Laban. It's also where Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So there's a lot of history in this area and what has taken place. So let's go ahead and read, beginning in chapter 17. Now Ahithophel urged Absalom, "Let me choose 12,000 men to start out after David tonight, and I will catch up with him while he is weary and discouraged, and he and his troops will panic and everyone will run away. Then I will kill only the king, and I will bring all the people back to you as a bride returns to her husband. After all, it is only one man's life that you seek. That you will be at peace. Then you'll be at peace with all the people." This plan seemed to be good to Absalom and to all the elders of Israel. But then Absalom said, bring in Hushai the Archite. Let's see what he thinks about this." And when Hushai arrived, Absalom told him what Ahithophel had said. And then he asked, "What's your opinion? Should we follow Ahithophel's advice? If not, what do you suggest?" "Well," Hushai replied to Absalom, "this time Ahithophel has made a mistake. You know your father and his men. They are mighty warriors. Right now they are as enraged as a mother bear who has been robbed of her cubs. And remember that your father is an experienced man of war. He won't be spending the night among the troops. He is probably already hidden in some pit or cave. And when he comes out and attacks and a few of your men fall, there will be panic among your troops. And the word will spread that Absalom's men are being slaughtered. Then even the bravest soldiers, though they have the heart of a lion, will be paralyzed with fear. For all Israel knows what a mighty warrior your father is and how courageous his men are. I recommend that you mobilize the entire army of Israel, bringing them from as far away as Dan in the north and Beersheba in the south. That way you will have an army as numerous as the sand on the seashore, and I advise that you personally lead the troops. When we find David, we'll fall on him like dew, like that falls on the ground. Then neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. And if David were to escape into some town, you will have all Israel there at your command. Then we can take ropes and drag the walls of the towns into the nearest valley until every stone is torn down." Then Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "Hushai's advice is better than Ahithophel's," for the Lord had determined to defeat the counsel of Ahithophel, which really was the better plan, so that he could bring disaster on Absalom. Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar the priests what Ahithophel had said to Absalom and the elders of Israel, and what he himself had advised instead. "Quick," he told them, "find David and urge him not to stay at the shallows of the Jordan River tonight. He must go across at once into the wilderness beyond. Otherwise, he will die and his entire army with him." Jonathan and Ahimaaz had been staying at En-Rogel, so as not to be seen entering and leaving the city. Arrangements had been made for a servant girl to bring them the message that they were to take to King David. But a boy spotted them at En-Rogel, and he told Absalom about it. So they quickly escaped to Barum, where a man hid them down inside a well in his courtyard. The man's wife put a cloth over the top of the well and scattered grain on it to dry in the sun, so no one expected that they were there. When Absalom's men arrived, they asked, "Have you seen Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" And the woman replied, "They were here, but they crossed over the brook." Absalom's men looked for them without success and returned to Jerusalem. When the two men crawled out of the well and hurried on to King David, "Quick," they told him, "cross the Jordan tonight." And they told him how Ahithophel had advised that he be captured and killed. So David and all the people with him went across the Jordan River during the night, and they were all on the other bank before dawn. When Ahithophel realized that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. He died there and was buried in the family tomb. David soon arrived at Mahanaim. By now, Absalom had mobilized the entire army of Israel and was leading his troops across the Jordan River. Absalom had appointed Amasa as commander of his army, replacing Joab, who had been commander under David. Amasa was Joab's cousin. His father was Jether, an Ishmaelite. His mother Abigail, daughter of Nahash, was the sister of Joab's mother, Zeruiah. Absalom and the Israelite army set up camp in the land of Gilead. When David arrived at Mahanaim, he was warmly greeted by Shobi, son of Nahash, who came from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and by Machir, son of Amiel, from Lodabar, and by Barzillai of Gilead, from Rogelim. They brought sleeping mats, cooking pots, serving bowls, wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans, lentils, honey butter, sheep, goats, and cheese for David and those who were with him. For they said, "You must all be very hungry and tired and thirsty after your long march through the wilderness." David now mustered the men who were with him and appointed generals and captains to lead them. He sent the troops out in 3 groups, placing one group under Joab, one under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and the other one under Attai, this man from Gath. The king told his troops, "I'm going out with you." But his men objected strongly. "You must not go," they urged. "If we have to turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troops. They will be looking only for you, and you are worth 10,000 of us. And it is better that you stay here in the town and send help if we need it." "If you think that's the best plan, I'll do it," the king answered. So he stood alongside the gate of the town as the troops marched out in groups of hundreds and of thousands. And the king gave his command to Joab, Abishai, and Attai, "For my sake, deal gently with young Absalom." And all the troops heard the king give this order to his commanders. So the battle began in the forest of Ephraim, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. This was a great slaughter that day, and 20,000 men laid down their lives. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. During the battle, Absalom happened to come upon some of David's men, and he tried to escape on his mule. But as he rode underneath the thick branches of a great tree, his hair got caught in the tree. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air, and one of David's men saw what had happened and told Joab, "I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree. "What?" Joab demanded. "You saw him there and didn't kill him? I would have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." "I would not kill the king's son for even 1,000 pieces of silver," the man replied to Joab. "We all heard the king say to you and Abishai and Attai, 'For my sake, please spare young Absalom.' And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, and the king would certainly find out who did it, you yourself would be the first to abandon me." "Enough of this nonsense," Joab said. Then he took 3 daggers and plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangled, still alive, in the great tree. 10 of Joab's young armor-bearers then surrounded Absalom and killed him. Then Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. They threw Absalom's body into a deep pit in the forest and piled a great heap of stones over it, and all Israel fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the king's valley, for he said, "I have no son to carry on my name." He named the monument after himself, and it is known as Absalom's monument to this day. When Zadok's son Ahimaaz said, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord has rescued him from his enemies," "No," Joab told him, "it wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You can be my messenger another time, but not today." Then Joab said to a man from Ethiopia, "Go tell the king what you have seen." And the man bowed and ran off. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab, "Whatever happens, please let me go too." "Why should you go, my son?" Joab said. "There will be no reward for your news." "Yes, but let me go anyway." Joab finally said, "All right, go ahead." So Ahimaaz took the less demanding route by way of the plain and ran to Mahanaim ahead of the Ethiopian. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates of the town, the watchman climbed to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked, he saw a lone man running toward him. He shouted the news down to David, and the king replied, "If he is alone, He has news." As the messenger came closer, the watchman saw another man running toward them. He shouted, "Down, here comes another one." The king replied, "He also has news, will have news." "The first man runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok," the watchman said. "He's a good man and comes with good news," the king replied. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "Everything is all right." He bowed before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against my lord the king." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" Ahimaaz replied, "When Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion, but I didn't know what was happening." "Wait here," the king told him. So Ahimaaz stepped aside. Then the man from Ethiopia arrived and said, "I have good news for my lord the king. Today the Lord has rescued you from all those who rebelled against you." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" And the Ethiopian replied, "May all your enemies, my lord the king, both now and in the future, share the fate of that young man." The king was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room over the gateway and burst into tears. And as he went, he cried, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Here's a map of the lay of the land. Remember, there's Jericho and Jerusalem. It's down here. There is Mahanaim, and here is where this battle takes place, crossing the Jordan. So it's in the middle part there with the death of Absalom by hanging in a tree. And so we get this story, and we're going to find that David really struggles with this. We can try to get into David's head, but my guess is that struggle is that he had such a poor relationship with his son that his son was willing to kill him. Not only that, 20,000 men die because of David and Absalom. And you can throw that completely on David and his lack of parenting skills and what he did and how he handled this situation. So let me remind you again, you don't have to be a great parent. Just be a good parent, and God can do great things in your kids. Have a great day.